Nioh 3 really surprised me. It's not that I wasn't looking forward to the long-awaited sequel to Team Ninja's Nioh 2, it's just that in the years since Nioh 2 dropped, I feel like I've played a lot of Team Ninja games that resemble this franchise. Between the first game and the second game, there's also been Wolong Fallen Dynasty, which was a spiritual successor in many ways, and then Rise of the Ronin, which took things in another direction but still retained that hack-and-slash Souls-like DNA that made people fall in love with these games to begin with. Therefore, when Nioh 3 dropped its first trailer, I expected it to be more of the same, another Nioh game that plays and looks exactly how you expect it to. But that's not really what I got. I jumped into Nioh 3 after initially not being a true believer after being given a code by the publisher, and I've got to say, this thing is so much different to what I expected it to be, but in the best possible way. The changes that the team has made to the core combat and exploration and even story have really resonated with me and allowed the game to be far more enjoyable and far fresher than I ever thought it could be. Now, I need to clarify before I jump into specifics that this is a review in progress. Nioh 3 is an absolutely massive game. I've played just under 30 hours of the game, and I'm less than halfway through the main story if the progression bar on the PlayStation homepage is correct. And it feels that way too. I've done 2 of the main areas in the game, 2 of the mini open worlds that you get to explore, and I think I've got at least 2 more of those to go. So this is very much a review in progress, more than a first impressions. I've played more than the demo, for instance, but not a full look at the title because, like I said, there is so much content in here, and I wanted to get something out to just talk about the fundamental changes that have been made. So let's talk about the biggest of those. Nioh 3 isn't an open world game necessarily in that you have one massive sandbox to explore, but it is what they're referring to as open field, which is essentially a bunch of mini open worlds stick together. In each of these areas, after the linear introductory mission, you get to choose how you want to tackle them. Yes, there are recommended levels that your character could be to fight the enemies within each zone, but you can theoretically go to the very bottom of the map if you wanted to and explore the way that you want to explore. It's definitely different from how Nioh 2 handled things, and while it might not be for everyone, I do think this is a big win for the game. I think it puts you more in the moment as you get to choose what activities to tackle, which helps with repetition, a topic I'll get to later, but ultimately just allows you to indulge in the new moveset and the new mechanics that the developers have added. Because the second biggest change to the formula is adding a brand new combat style, which is called the ninja style. So the way that Nioh 3 plays is a little bit like a perfect middle point between Nioh 2's playstyle and Rise of the Ronins. And if you haven't played those games, I'll try to explain. So the previous 2 Nioh games were more conventional in their Souls-like formula. Yeah, they were faster, yeah, they had a bit of a bigger emphasis on combos, but ultimately, you were doing the same things that you would in Dark Souls 1. You were reading enemy attack patterns, you were managing a very strict stamina bar, and you were trying to get a few hits in and get away whilst being in control of the overall flow of a combat encounter, while trying to dodge, while trying to parry, and keep the enemy at bay. While that formula is still there at the heart of Nioh 3 though, it has been made much more forgiving with a larger emphasis on spectacle fighting and combat that would be more at home in something like Ninja Gaiden. The samurai style is more of the classic Nioh combat. Here the emphasis is on reading those attack patterns, brutalizing your opponent with heavier strikes, and evading and parrying out the way to keep in control. The ninja style, however, is so much faster. It's like playing the game on 2 times speed. Here, you're focused on agile, quick movements, on doing double jumps over your opponent to stab them in the back, and stealth kills. While playing in the ninja style, you also have access to ninjutsu powers, which are essentially ranged attacks. If you hold down the right bumper and press one of the face buttons, you can throw a flaming shuriken at someone that might explode and cause them to stagger. Now, I thought these two styles might end up just being a little bit of a gimmick, like you might go into ninja style for a little bit, but ultimately it wouldn't be very viable. That was my initial thought. However, I was completely wrong. It turns out that ninja style, even though the game initially suggests is more about chipping away at a bunch of enemies and hitting them with ranged combos, you can play the game like that, but you can also just go toe-to-toe with the toughest enemies in the game and use ninja style's unique abilities to take them down. I actually looked at my stats last night, and I have killed more enemies in ninja style than I have done in the samurai style. Being able to swap on a dime depending on the tool set that your enemy is using adds so much depth and variety to the actual gameplay. It allows you to be more reactive in fights because you are fighting more enemies than you were in Nioh 2. It also means that you're fighting more enemy types at once, and being able to switch between these two different playstyles gives you that ability to adapt to anything that the game throws at you. Overall, the focus here is on immediacy over the more methodical style of play present in Nioh 2. That's not to say you won't get your ass kicked if you make a mistake, but there is a general sense that this is less punishing overall, and you have more tools at your disposal to get back into a fight or just to absolutely tool on an enemy. And just generally speaking, the fact that I can do a double jump air dash in a Nioh game is just kind of crazy. To complement both these different styles of play as well, you do have unique weapons that are attached to each brand of combat. As you can imagine, the ninja weapons are much faster. You've got dual tonfas, you've got wrist blades, you've got a samurai sword that you hold backwards because, as we know, holding a samurai sword backwards is much cooler than holding it forwards. And as the samurai version of the character, you have access to heavier hitting weapons like giant mallets and big swords. On top of this, though, there are the ninjutsu powers that I mentioned that are attached to the ninja style, but also the samurai has the different stances that come over from the previous Nioh games, where you get a higher stance that is more focused on slower but more powerful attacks, and an evasive style that allows you more stamina to dodge out the way and chip down an opponent's ki level, which is their stamina. And then on top of that, you have an extensive upgrade system as well that can add new combos to your arsenal depending on which playstyle you're using, and also upgrade weapons to give them new abilities. There is a lot of depth here, is what I'm trying to say. Kind of an overwhelming amount of depth. But it is all in service of allowing you to play your own way. If you are interested in action games like this and your focus is on parrying attacks and then fighting back, you can play the samurai style mainly and focus on that element of the game. If you prefer to take enemies out more stealthily with backstabs and critical hits, then you can play that way as well. Or if you want to try to blend all the styles and focus on dodging and heavy hitting attacks, and then swapping to a ninja to double jump off someone and come down with a big sword, you can do that as well. I think that's the most impressive thing about the combat system. It feels good to use, but there is genuinely so much depth to it as well. But that brings us to the difficulty, because with all of these tools, the game does feel much easier than Nioh 2 ever did. You will still die a lot, but you will die far less than in Team Ninja's other games, and there are a few reasons for that beyond just the amount of combos and combat abilities at your disposal. So first is the generally forgiving approach to health and stamina for your main character. Here, your ki meter or your stamina meter goes down as you would expect with every swipe that you take or every special move that you pull off. It's also dependent on your equip rate. It'll go down faster if you're using heavier armor, for instance. But while it might look similar to other games on the surface, it's actually much more forgiving than it first appears. And that's because, for instance, if you're playing as the samurai style, you do get the opportunity after finishing any attack to get a little bit of that ki meter back. After you've finished attacking, a small blue swirl will arrive around your player, and if you hit the right bumper at the right time, you'll essentially do a Gears of War style active reload that gets that ki back and allows it to quickly regenerate. The ninja style, on the other hand, is so focused on quick attacks that cause barely any ki loss at all. You can go through multiple combos without ever getting fatigued and having to stop the attack. Combine these systems and approaches with upgrades that, again, give you more ki to use and allow it to regenerate faster, and it's not as much of an issue as it is in other games. You still have to keep in mind of it, it can still catch you out, but you have ways to get back on the offensive much more quickly than you otherwise would. And the same goes for health as well. Initially, I wasn't sure about the system that they implemented here. So, like in the previous games or in other Souls titles like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, you start with a finite amount of healing items. You can only carry so many at a time, but rather than have a fixed amount that only replenishes every single time you hit a checkpoint, Nioh 3 does things a little bit differently. Here, the health items called Elixirs can also be farmed in the real world. Enemies have a chance of dropping them, you're able to find them by unearthing secrets or finding items out in the world, and what that means is, even though you can only carry a few at a time, it's very unlikely that you're going to run out as you're exploring. Hell, you don't even need to hit half of the shrines, because if you're exploring and you're killing enemies, there is a big chance that they're going to drop elixirs and you're going to be able to push through to the next section. So it does take away some of the challenge that you find in Souls games, where you can sometimes think, should I risk pushing on with only 2 health items remaining to try to get to the next checkpoint, or do I cash in everything that I've got now and respawn the enemies? That's not really a decision that you're going to make here, because again, not only is it quite forgiving out in the field, but you can also get upgrades and item buffs that increase the drop rate of those elixirs, meaning that you can always go into an enemy base or try to take on a boss knowing that there is an easy way to get a good amount of health to give you a good go at it. While I was initially worried about this system, however, is that I thought we might end up in a Bloodborne situation where you run out of health items and you have to constantly go and grind for them before you can feel confident enough to take on a boss. Here, at least the way that I'm playing 30 hours in, I currently have 180 elixirs in the storeroom. I'm never going to run out of these things. Whatever I use, I find on the next run and replace tenfold. So that's a plus. I think it means that there isn't that element of punishment in the open world, and it encourages experimentation, but it certainly makes the game feel easier than you might be expecting. Likewise, by the general nature of being a more sandbox experience, it does mean that you can overlevel a little bit in Nioh 3 and transform bosses and enemy bases into complete cakewalks. I have probably killed more named bosses in this game on the first attempt than in any other Team Ninja title combined. Just by virtue of exploring and getting better gear and upgrading your character and learning the attack patterns of the enemies, you're going to go into some fights feeling a little bit too confident, maybe a little over-prepared. Thankfully, it never gets as bad as in the latter stages of Elden Ring, where you really can break the experience and go to areas and two-shot bosses. Thankfully, because you have a bunch of different open worlds here, it usually means that if you are going to be over-leveled, you're not going to be ridiculously over-leveled to the point where everything becomes completely trivial. It's just going to be easier than you might expect. And again, that's also down to some of the tools that you have at your disposal. You can take enemies out really quickly if you use stealth range combat, and you can use stealth in and of itself to take out a bunch of enemies in a group before anyone even knows you're there by getting some ridiculous damage on a critical backstab. For me, while all of this definitely does affect the difficulty, I do think it's ultimately in service of a more satisfying combat loop overall. There is definitely still challenge here, and the game feels ultimately good to master. Some bosses will give you that classic Nioh experience of just throwing your head against a wall over and over again, trying to best it and learn its movesets and figure out how to counter what it's bringing to the table. They just might be a little few and far between. Speaking of bosses though, I do have some criticisms about the game that I'm worried will definitely become compounded the more that I play it. Those bosses that I mentioned are definitely few and far between, and while there are high points, there are a lot of bosses that are just unmemorable in the game. I've come across so many that are just named versions of regular enemies that have a bit more health, maybe a few different attacks, and are just generally harder hitting and harder to take down. Likewise with the main bosses, I almost feel like I can't give them a proper review because some of them have been over in an instant. You can just bully them to death and you don't get to fully appreciate all their different stages or all their different attacks. The same can be said for the general enemy variety. I feel like I've seen a lot of the same enemies with just a slight reskin over my 30 hours with the game, no matter what location or time period I'm actually in. And it's not a terrible thing, there's still a good amount of enemies in there. I just think that fatigue could set in because you are seeing the same things over and over again, and more likely than not, attacking them in the same way because you already know how to best them. The loot system is also alright. It's not great. If you've played one of these Team Ninja games before, including Nioh 2, it'll be very, very similar to what you're expecting it to be. Every other enemy seems to drop a fountain of loot, which means you're always getting new armor, you're always getting new range weapons and melee weapons, and you're constantly in menus switching out to watch the numbers go up. And it is satisfying to watch the numbers go up. It is cool to do a side mission to unlock a gold tier weapon or a purple tier weapon that you know you can then swap in. It's just that it happens at a frequency that you're constantly in these menus, which, again, are okay, but they're not the most intuitive menus. You're going to spend a lot of time shuffling between different items, getting rid of a lot of items. You can have thousands of items at a time just to figure out what to equip your character with. And because of the frequency of loot, it kind of makes smithing in this game a little redundant. You could spend your gold and your resources to level up an item that you currently have, but chances are you're going to find another one in 5 minutes that's just as good, if not better, and you'll be thinking, why didn't I just wait and upgrade this one? But then by the time you would have done that anyway, you would have found another weapon that's even better. The point is, there's a lot of weapons, and they come at you thick and fast. This brings us to the upgrade tree for both the samurai and ninja styles, and while the upgrade tree isn't bad, it gets the job done, it's probably the most superfluous that I've seen in quite some time. So you can upgrade not only your character's styles, but also the weapons they used, like I mentioned earlier, which gives you new combos or new attack types to swap in to your toolset. And that's cool. Again, it allows you to really come at the game with a specific playstyle in mind and unlock the things that will allow you to play closer to what you have in mind. It's just that after a while, I've personally found some of these upgrades a little bit boring and a little bit useless, to the point where now I've kind of stopped upgrading my character at all. If you look at how many points I have for both styles, it's sort of ridiculous. I should be encouraged to use these things, but I'm getting by just fine, and nothing in there is catching my eye to make me want to try out. I constantly keep thinking I'll save them in case something cool drops, but that hasn't really happened yet. The main issue that I have with the game, though, and what worries me going forward, is the overall repetition. I really love the combat in this game. I really love the level design. It's just that what you experience in hour 5 is the exact same as what I'm experiencing now in hour 30. Yeah, the details might change. You might be in a snowy area rather than a hellscape. Your weapons will certainly have better damage numbers, but you're fighting the same types of enemies, doing the same types of activities, raiding bandit camps, looking for the same collectibles, and it can feel like a bit of a slog after a while. Now, I do think it's less repetitious than Nioh 2, which was so full of things to do that demanded your attention that it just became incredibly unwieldy, in my opinion. There's still a lot of fluff in here, and you could argue it's bang for your buck. Like I said, I'm 30 hours in and less than halfway through the entire game, but does it justify its length? I can't really say right now whether it's going to be worth it in the long run, but I can tell you that after 30 hours, I definitely am feeling a little bit fatigued and like I've seen most of what the game has to offer. I'm still going to jump back in because I love the combat system, because I love indulging in this world that Team Ninja has created, but I don't know if it has anything new to shock me with. But overall, I am really enjoying my time with Nioh 3. Is it a perfect game? Absolutely not. Is it a really good 7-ish out of 10 right now where I am? Absolutely. Especially if you're a fan of Team Ninja's previous work, I think this game will do a lot for you. Like I said, especially in the way that it blends the style of Rise of the Ronin with the Nioh franchise. And I do love that the new elements that have been brought to the table here, especially the open field design and the new ninja style, they actually make a substantial difference. This feels like a considerably different game from its predecessor. There's a lot to get to grips with. This is a massive experience, and while it might not be the most polished or the most fresh, it certainly is worth a look. I'd recommend playing the demo. You get the entire first section, see if it clicks with you, and if it does, you might like everything else the game has to offer. But for now, call me pleasantly surprised because I did not see this coming. But let me know in the comments if you are looking forward to picking up Nioh 3 and if these changes are up your street, or if you're a Nioh 1 and 2 purist and you won't be playing this game because it's far easier. While you're here as well, if you want more videos like this, just click one on screen now and make sure to hit subscribe for WhatCulture Gaming.